La Niña is back for 2025, stirring questions about how it might shape the United States weather from winter into spring. Usually, this climate pattern forms when Pacific surface waters near the equator cool below average, altering atmospheric currents worldwide. But this time, it arrived late and remains relatively weak. Even so, a mild La Niña can tilt local weather in big ways, fueling storms in some regions and intensifying dryness in others. In past events, La Niña often brought heavier rain or snow to the Pacific Northwest and Great Lakes, while leaving the southern tier of states drier. Strong La Niña episodes overshadow competing influences, but 2025's weaker version lets other atmospheric forces join the dance. This could mean more surprises for states like California or regions like the Midwest. The big question: how consistent will classic La Niña trends be when the phenomenon is late blooming and overshadowed by historically warm oceans? California is a prime place to watch, historically split between wetter conditions up north and dryness down south during La Niña. Early this winter, Northern California did see decent rain, helping reservoirs recover slightly. Meanwhile, Southern California stayed parched, fueling wildfires in areas that missed moisture. Because this La Niña lacks raw strength, a few storms have sneaked into the south, but not enough to erase the dryness. Fire managers remain on edge. If normal rainfall stays scant, the region could endure an extended burning season. Whenever dryness pairs with strong winds, wildfires can ignite quickly. In January, parts of Los Angeles County faced sudden blazes, forcing evacuations. Typically, a robust La Niña would guarantee dryness for southern areas, but this weaker event has allowed short-lived rain spells. The concern is that small bouts of moisture can spur vegetation growth, which later dries out and forms fresh tinder, heightening the fire threat into spring. Beyond California, much of the Southwest relies on winter rains and mountain snow to carry them through hotter months. Even a couple of well-timed storms might not offset a season trending drier overall. Reservoirs in Arizona and New Mexico remain at risk if this mild La Niña, plus broader atmospheric influences, keeps precipitation below average. Water managers watch reservoir levels anxiously, hoping enough storms slip through to soften the blow. The Midwest often sees extra precipitation during La Niña, whether in the form of rain or snow. That can help farmers replenish soil moisture ahead of planting. This year, some areas are already above average for rainfall and snowfall. Because La Niña came late, there's concern that multiple storms could cluster in a shorter window, saturating soil or causing flood risks. If winter spills deeper into spring, planting timetables might shift, rattling crop yields and grocery prices. In St. Louis, Chicago, and Indianapolis, waves of snow have alternated with mild spells, leaving residents to navigate icy roads one week and balmy afternoons the next. While La Niña tilts odds in favor of certain conditions, it's no guarantee. Arctic air masses and random jet stream shifts can override the pattern. Farther northwest, Washington and Oregon typically greet La Niña with relief, hoping for above-average mountain snow to sustain them through summer. So far, readings show decent accumulations, but local experts warn that a weaker La Niña might fail to deliver a full season of storms. If ocean temperatures shift even slightly, storm tracks can veer away. Snowpack is a lifeline for hydropower, salmon habitats, and farming, so each additional inch can be critical. Colorado and Idaho ski resorts also rely on these storms. A strong La Niña would likely boost snowfall, but in 2025, storms could arrive unevenly. One excellent month followed by a lull, making it tough for ski areas to plan. Meanwhile, the Southeast has endured a patchwork of warm streaks and sudden cold plunges. Typically, La Niña produces a warmer, drier winter in places like Georgia or Florida, but the weaker nature this year has allowed Arctic blasts to slip in, creating startling temperature swings. Farmers fear early blooms followed by freeze damage. The net outcome still may lean warm overall, yet the roller coaster pattern disrupts everything from fruit harvests to homeowners' heating bills. That dryness can creep along the Gulf Coast, but it's not guaranteed. So far this winter, some storms have snaked across the south, countering La Niña's usual dryness. Residents from Houston to Raleigh might wonder how it's a La Niña year if they see cold fronts more often than expected. Meteorologists say the phenomenon, in its milder state, can't always block out other weather makers. Moving north, typical La Niña expectations call for near or slightly above average precipitation in the northeast, with occasional nor'easters if cold air meets Atlantic moisture. Indeed, sections of the region have already seen notable storms, but the frequency has been patchy. Blocking patterns near Greenland or dips in the polar vortex can overshadow any La Niña effect. So major East Coast cities could swing from mild rainy stretches to powerful snowstorms with little warning. If you're aiming to travel or just shovel your driveway, 2025's weather seesaw is no small hassle. What happens when La Niña fades? Forecasts suggest it could last into April before reverting to neutral conditions. That might open the door for a bigger shift in spring's weather, potentially altering rainfall in the south or guiding late-season snow across the north. Or it might extend dryness in drought-prone areas. Severe weather season in the plains could spike if atmospheric ingredients align. The interplay between neutral conditions and leftover La Niña patterns sometimes boosts tornado risk, although predicting that outcome so far ahead remains tricky. Agriculture across the plains and Midwest hinges on such transitions. Too much rain around planting can bog down fields, while too little can stunt early crop growth. La Niña alone can't predict these extremes, but it tilts the odds. Farmers might see saturating storms in March, followed by an abrupt shift to dryness in April, a recipe for inconsistent yields. Industry experts are urging caution. Prepare for big swings in moisture rather than banking on a stable run of weather. Outside of farming, the impacts reach everyday life. More frequent cold snaps in the central and eastern U.S. can drive up heating costs. Storm clusters can paralyze airports. Northern regions might see repeated heavy snow, while southern states fret over drought and wildfire. All these local events trace back to subtle changes in the jet stream, triggered partly by cooler Pacific waters thousands of miles away. It's a powerful reminder that Earth's climate is deeply connected. Some wonder how climate change affects La Niña or El Niño, possibly strengthening or weakening their usual patterns. Warmer oceans generally provide more moisture for the storm, which can amplify rain or snow in La Niña-facing zones. At the same time, widespread ocean warmth can clash with the cooler patch along the equator, dulling La Niña's influence. Scientists are still sorting out these layers, but it's clear that a small nudge from ocean anomalies can cause large regional impacts. Forecasters also look to the Atlantic hurricane season, where La Niña can reduce wind shear and allow more storms. If La Niña lingers into mid-2025, the Atlantic could see higher hurricane counts, but if it fades early, it might have less effect. Last year showed major hurricanes can arise even in neutral conditions, so La Niña isn't the only factor. Still, coastal states keep a wary eye, knowing a leftover La Niña could tip the scales toward a more active season. Water managers in the West hope spring storms continue if La Niña retains some presence. Good late-season snowpack can bolster reservoirs for summer. If La Niña vanishes abruptly in February, dryness could set in. That dryness, in turn, fuels summer and autumn fires. Oregon and Northern California rely heavily on a steady snowmelt into June. A mild late La Niña complicates planning. No one wants to assume abundant snow only to face a surprise shift that leaves slopes bare. Even a weaker La Niña remains valuable for meteorologists, hinting at broad patterns despite wide local variability. The big caveat for 2025 is that you shouldn't expect a textbook scenario. Think of it more as a background note in a larger climate symphony. If you appreciate these kinds of breakdowns, consider subscribing for ongoing updates on how large-scale weather dynamics might affect your region. One possibility is that La Niña holds on through early spring, directing more storms to the northwest and midwest, leaving the southwest mostly dry. Eventually, the equatorial Pacific could warm, ushering in neutral conditions by late spring. Or that shift might happen sooner, flipping rainfall patterns just as farmers plant or as wildfire season ramps up. The unpredictability is nerve-wracking for local decision-makers who prefer stable forecasts. Cities and counties that plan for everything from snow removal to flood control often blend short-term forecasts with these seasonal outlooks. If forecasters see a strong chance of repeated storms in March, local governments might staff up for emergency road clearing. If dryness seems likely to persist in places like southern Texas, they might implement water restrictions or pre-position firefighting resources. Beyond that, some speculate about the possibility of El Niño returning by late 2025 or early 2026. That would swing the pendulum in another direction, often bringing rain to the south and dryness to the northwest. But for now, we're dealing with a subdued, late-blooming La Niña. If it taught us anything, it's that even a modest climate pattern can shuffle storms, alter temperature swings, and raise uncertainties in everything from agriculture to wildfire risk. On a larger scale, the 2025 La Niña underscores that these events aren't one-size-fits-all. They span a spectrum, from blockbuster episodes that dominate headlines to mild ones that let multiple factors compete. The result is a patchwork of dryness in some areas and surplus moisture in others. Meanwhile, rising global temperatures overlay each La Niña, or El Niño, with new complexities. Warmer oceans can push these patterns in unexpected directions, and scientists are still learning how intense or frequent future events might become. If you felt direct impacts, perhaps a bigger heating bill thanks to sudden cold snaps, or concerns about wildfires in a drier region, remember that La Niña is only part of the story. Even neutral winters can deliver harsh cold waves, and strong La Niña years can have exceptions. Still, knowing the backdrop helps communities anticipate whether dryness or wetness is more likely. That's critical for everyone from farmers to road crews to weekend travelers. Ultimately, what La Niña does to the United States in 2025 is shape the odds of certain weather extremes rather than lock them in place. Expect dryness in parts of the Southwest, bursts of wetness in the Midwest and Northwest, and a yo-yo of conditions in the East and South. The phenomenon will probably linger through the latter half of winter, fading by spring. That fade could matter for spring floods, tornado risk, or summer droughts. By summer, we'll be dealing with the aftermath. Too much water in some reservoirs, not enough in others. It's a swirling dance that shows how a patch of cooler ocean can ripple across an entire continent. If you've followed this deep dive, you see how a seemingly subtle shift in ocean temperatures can rearrange everyday life, from commuting under snowy skies to planning controlled burns in fire-prone hills. That's the hallmark of La Niña. Even a weaker event can send shockwaves through our seasonal patterns. Stay tuned, keep up with your local forecasts, and prepare for a winter and early spring where surprises might be standard fare. If you find these insights helpful, consider subscribing for more on how Earth's big climate swings shape our daily world. In 2025, La Niña may not be roaring, but she's definitely in the mix.